Hello, my sensational students. Welcome to Bloom and Grow Education. My name is Meredith. Today's lesson is a writing lesson. It's suitable for year 2 to year 6 students. I'll explain a little bit later on how it can be both suitable for year 2s and year 6s. But we are going to be working on our descriptive writing skills and more specifically our show, don't tell skills. One of the best ways that we can show improvement in our writing, we can show maturity and complexity in our writing, is by showing, not telling. And one of the things that we can also do is children typically describe what they can see. And we're going to be using all of our senses. So we're going to be describing what we can hear and smell and taste and see, and also feel emotionally in this situation, which really helps to take that descriptive writing right up to the next level. So I've got the picture there and I've got the worksheet there, and you can print that off. There will also be a version there where you can just do it digitally straight onto the page. That's fine as well. If you don't want to print it off, it's also totally okay for you to just draw this up into your book. So just get your ruler and your pencil and draw 6 boxes into your page, 6 big boxes. Don't do little itty bitty boxes, like the full big length of the page. And please make sure you use a ruler, because if you try and do it freehand, I think that it just makes things confusing because you focused on the squiggly line rather than the information that you're actually writing down. So we need 6 boxes labeled see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And then this is the image that we're going to be working on. So I chose this image because I want to specifically work on our cold vocabulary. So let's have a think first of all. So let's have a think about what we can see. Now, obviously we can see an iceberg, but what we're doing is we're gathering adjectives, we're gathering descriptive words. So we can't describe the iceberg if what we've got written down is iceberg. So we need to have a word, say, like white. But then white is a little bit boring. So we could improve on white with a synonym search. And we could come here. I like to do these image ones. White, pearl, maybe not snowy because it is snow. So that's probably might not be the best choice. Maybe porcelain. Again, frost might not be the best choice because it is frosty. Powder, maybe powder. I quite like this one. Pale, blank, snowy, ashen, clean, light, pallid, wane, bloodless, silver. That's kind of cool as well, and that's what I put into the example that I'm going to show you later on, because I thought it was funny. Here's another one from Twinkle. Pearl, porcelain, daisy, same kinds of things. So here under C we could put white, and then we could put some of those synonyms, so like maybe powder, porcelain, what else was there? Pearl, cotton, and just put down a few. We don't have to put down every single one. Right, what else can we see? Well, we can sort of see these bumpy, hilly ridges. So let's pop that down. And we're not writing full sentences. We're just writing keywords, which later on we're going to turn into full sentences in that paragraph. Right? And so you can add in any more words here which to do with sort of the bumpiness of it that you think would work. All right, I would like you to pause the video here and write down any ideas that you've got so far, and then we're going to keep on going. Okay, so we've talked about how it's sort of bumpy. What about if we talk about the water? So we could say that the water is crystal clear or translucent. So it's translucent because we can see through it, but not really clearly. So we can see the base of the iceberg down here. And it's sort of this lovely bluey color. And again, you could do a blue synonym search. I'm going to just do off the ones that I know. So we could say translucent, And we could say like blue, so we could do teal, aqua, those kinds of colors. So pause the video there and write down any other things that you can see. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit more freedom now. We're just doing C right now, the things that you can see. I would like you to write down any other things that you can see, maybe the reflection, the sky, the clouds, and any other descriptive words that would go around that. So what I'd like you to do is try and have a think for yourself, and then I'm going to show you the full list that I came up with my students to give you any more ideas. But I'd like you to really think for yourself before we get to that point, because you might be describing a tree one day and you don't have me to give you ideas. So you need to, this part of that thinking process needs to happen. So again, pause the video here and see what else you can think of to do that is to do with C. Okay, so this is the list that I came up with my students. So we've got opaque. So the water is translucent, which means you can see through it, but the iceberg itself is opaque, which means you can't see through it. We could talk about how obviously it's half in the water and half out. It's snow covered. It has those icy peaks. The edges are smooth. So although it's sort of bumpy, those actual edges here, these parts are kind of smooth, even though like the side of it here looks kind of bumpy or like coarse or rough. It's reflective, reflection, that reflection into the water down here. It's like an ice island. There's snow on it. It's tall, thick, and wide. There are cracks on it. There are like broken pieces floating in the sea behind it here. There's also some seaweed and the blue sky and the clouds. There's a bit of seaweed in here at the back. There's meters of ice below. The water is crystal clear. We sort of talked about the hilly terrain above, and they're sort of dripping rivulets. So here is where the water would drip as the sun is heating it up. All right, let's move on now to here. Now, obviously, we can't hear anything in this picture, but if we were, what kinds of things might we be able to hear? So obviously, we would have all of the water stuff. So all of that onomatopoeia that goes with water. So splash, splosh, that kind of thing. We would also, maybe the ice might be cracking. So as the ice heats up, it cracks apart. So that would be the ice. So starting to move a little bit more quickly now, pause the video and have a think. What are some sounds that I would be able to hear in this situation? Again, have a think for yourself, and then I'll share with you my ideas. Okay, so the ideas that my students came up with was the lapping of the water, waves crashing, the crunching of snow, the crashes that water breaks. So we could put that up here as well, next to that one. That splash, splosh, splish of the water, a plop, a pop, or a glug. That's water related. Trickle. Maybe there's the wind, there's howl, whisper, rustle, whoosh. Maybe there's the sound of the calming waves. Maybe an animal, like a seagull or a seal. And maybe there's like shatter, crackle, smash of the ice. So those are some words that you can add to your list. You can pause and add those on. Let's move on to smell. Now, I don't think that there would be an awful lot of things that you could smell in this situation. If we were describing a cupcake or cooking in the kitchen, then this would be all about smell and taste. But there's probably not going to be a lot. There's probably going to be the smell of salt or the smell of seaweed. Probably not too much that we could add in here. And again, over in taste, we might be tasting the salt. I can't think of anything else that you would really be able to taste in that kind of situation. Let's move on now then. So pause the video, quickly write those things in, and anything else that you can think of, and then let's move on down to touch. So touch is what we can physically, literally touch. Feel is our emotion. So we're going to come to that shortly, but this is physically what we can touch. And we might start off with the temperature, and then you would say something like cold. Again, cold is boring. So let's look at cold synonyms. And for colors, I like to go to images. For just general words, I like to sort of stay in this word search kind of a thing. If we look at number 2, this is like a person behaving coldly, be it somebody being unfriendly or unwelcoming. We want number 1. So chilly, cool, freezing, icy, snowy. We don't want to say that ice is icy cold, but we could say it was the wind was glacial. The wind pierced my skin. It was frigidly cold as I fell in the water. So some of those words. Now, having said that I usually prefer to stay in the words, I did like this pigeon one. Frigid, cool, icy, frosty, chilly, chill, cold-blooded, glacial, coldness, wintry. So those are some funny ones there. So we can add to our list. We could say a better word than cold would be glacial, frigid, piercing, icy. Just have to write down a few. So pause the video and write down some of those temperature things. Okay, next we might think about, well, actually being able to feel the ice, which would be hard, rough, coarse. We would feel the water, so it would be wet, maybe slimy. We might feel the wind, which might be soft or strong. And then you could build in some of it was a soft, frigid wind and bring in that temperature in there. So that's given you a few ideas. Again, please pause the video here, have a think for yourself about what you'd be able to physically feel, and then come back and I'll show you my ideas. So the ideas I have are slippery, smooth, lumpy, the wetness of the water, hard, soft, maybe fragile or flaky, sharp, rough, you might have numb hands, unbearably cold, that could come up here. Maybe that dissolving or melting, the ice being thick and heavy as you're holding onto it, and again, that wind that we talked about before. So pause the video and add in any other ideas that you would like to take from my list, and then we'll move over to feel. All right, last one. So for feel, we're talking about emotionally feel. And this is going to be quite subjective because it's going to be about how you feel in these kinds of situations. So for me, I think I would probably feel quite frightened in this situation. So one of the things my husband would like to do is go to Antarctica in like those cruises that you get. And it sounds really cool, but there's something about like the depth of the water and the isolation and the being so far away from helpness of the situation that makes me feel really quite frightened. But there'd be other people who would be like, that's awesome. Imagine the adventure. Imagine the trouble you could get into, the fun of trouble. So it's going to be quite different depending on your personality. So I think I would be frightened, and we can add to frightened with some synonyms like terror. What else could we come up with? Let's do a scared synonym. Fearful, alarmed, petrified. We could put in some of those. Panic, petrified, alarmed. Whereas you might think it's awesome, or it might let's stay away from happy. So let's think of some synonyms like joyful, gleeful, cheery, merry, joyful. Even some of these at number 2, you might feel very fortunate to be able to go in this unique situation. So those are some of the feelings that you might feel. So pause the video and write down how you think you would feel if you were standing on a boat looking at this iceberg, or maybe you're floating in the water, freezing, and you might feel very differently. So writing down some of those feelings. Okay, so the last part of this activity is to bring it all together to practice our descriptive writing skills. Now, if you are in year 2, maybe even in year 3, you would be writing something a little bit more simple. So it might look something like, I can see the cotton white iceberg, or the ice island. Sorry, let me make this bit bigger. The ice island is tall, or the ice island sits in the aqua ocean. So I can see the ice island sitting in the translucent aqua ocean. I can hear the cracking of the ice and the splash as it falls in the water. So it's a very simple sentence starter. I can see, I can hear, I can feel. So it would be, I touch the iceberg and it feels chilly and rough. So we've got rough, chilly. I didn't write down chilly, but you could write down something else. And last one I'm going to do is feel. Now, you don't have to do every single word. I'm not even going to do smell and taste because I don't really have that many ideas here. So I'm just choosing a couple of words and then writing from, I'm just choosing them. So I am joyful to be in this special place. So those would be your sentence starters to write your paragraph, but this is very young. If you're in year 4, 5, and 6, the expectation would be to build in your description into the action of what you're doing. So to show, not tell, which is how we show the maturity of our writing. We don't want to do that young thing that I've just shown. That's okay when you're just sort of trying to put all the ideas together in your head. Like year in year 2, you're still working out how to put a sentence together. But up in middle and upper school, you should be building it into the action of what you're doing. So say you are swimming. So you need, the action is swimming. So you need to be swimming through the chilly water. You need to be resting on the frigid ice. So we're going to build it into the action of what your character is doing. Now, we're not writing a whole narrative, we're just writing a paragraph, and we're just practicing those descriptive writing skills. We're looking for preferably 5, but 4 to 6 sentences in the paragraph would be great. So I often write from the first perspective. You don't have to, but I think it makes it a little bit easier in these situations to write from the first person, but you don't have to. So let's start off by setting the scene. Okay, so I swam desperately away from the sinking ship, trying to get to the iceberg, which might save my life. So that's me setting the scene, and it's establishing that what I'm doing as the character is swimming. The water was so frigidly cold, or we could even just say frigid, that my body became more numb with each fumbling stroke. So that's me bringing in what I can feel. So it's frigid, and we talked about the numb hands in here. I managed to grab the sides of the rough iceberg. That's how the iceberg physically feels, and it dissolves in my hand against physically feel. And it fell with a plop. That started me starting to bring in the sounds. Plop. Rough is also over here. I haven't said too much about the rough, about what I can see. Let's bring that in here. I finally managed to pull myself on and found a tiny crevice. So we talked about some of the crevices. We talked about the cracks. Sorry, that's my rat bag cat coming for a visit. And we talked about the powder white snow. The powder white snow to hide from the piercing wind and wait for rescue. So I've talked about a lot about how it physically feels. So emotionally, I'm desperate. The water feels frigid. I'm numb. It feels rough. It's dissolving. I hear plopping. I see a crevice. I see the powdery white snow, and I feel physically the piercing wind. So that's just me grabbing a few ideas from all that vocabulary that we've gathered and writing about, I wrote about 5 sentences there to practice those descriptive writing skills. And so my message for the older kids is you need to build it into the action of what your character is doing so that it's not so clunky of, I saw the white iceberg, which is totally okay when you're in year 2 or year 1. But as we're getting older, we want to be moving beyond that skill. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'd really appreciate it if you could please thank me in return by liking this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. And I'll see you at the next lesson.